Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to our evening session here in Germany and in the afternoon in New York City. We have a side event on the topics of SDGs. The motto of the United Nations SDGs, leave no one behind. SDGs in the Lao PDR is today our theme. We have some very, very good speakers this evening, some glorious. I'm so sorry for one technical problem. Professor Joshua Kupel cannot join the meeting at this moment. He has some technical problems, but our speakers are all right. And first, I want to give the floor to Dr. Bunton Chantalawong-Wiese. She is a doctor of medicine from living in Germany, a former Lao citizen. And she will be our first speaker this evening. Dr. Bunton, you have the floor.
Thank you, Marcus. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Dr. Bunton Chantalawong-Wiese. I am the president of the Alliance for Democracy in Laos. I would like to speak about SDG 1, 2, and 16. SDG 1 and poverty on its form everywhere. If you follow the World Bank figures, Laos has achieved some success in combating poverty in recent years. However, these successes are in danger due to the COVID-19 pandemic and the still escalating corruption in Laos. Independent experts even report that poverty remains high and that the report by the government of Laos are not true. The report that we receive from our employers in Laos indicates this. In indication of the still great poverty in the country is the high youth unemployment. But other sources all confirm the report of our employees. Laos still ranked 137th in the SDI index. The causes of poverty are not just corruption, but also the lack of infrastructure in Laos and the underdeveloped economy. Another sure sign of extreme poverty is the fact that there are very many school dropouts in Laos. Many children are forced to leave school early and earn money. The government of Lao People's Republic currently puts annual economic growth at 4.6%. However, some developed aids projects are also included in the figures for economic output. One must assume that real growth is more likely to be around 0%. Corruption and unequal treatment of the government towards individual active growth prevent the situation in the country from improving in the long term. Recommendation. In order to fight poverty, Laos needs sustainable projects that are aimed directly at the population instead of the mega project in only serve foreign investors. All measures to combat poverty must be discussed publicly instead to be incited behind closed doors in the Politburo of the Communist Party without the consent of the people. SDG and Hinga achieve food security, improve nutrition, and promote sustainable agriculture. The sustainability of agriculture has been restricted more and more in recent years due to more and more monocultures and interference in farms by investors and state authorities. The banana plantations operated by Chinese investors are a particular problem. The banana plantation pose a major threat to the ecosystem in Laos. Excessive use of pesticides not only poison the environment, but also the worker on the plantation and the people in the surrounding are suffering serious diseases. The government of Laos issues a ban on the establishment of further banana plantation in 2018. However, this ban was lifted again after the cleaning dam disaster and the flooding. According to the government, this was done to quickly rebuild the country, but since the profit goes exclusively to the investor abroad and the people from Laos only receive very low wages and then also get sick from the work, no sustainable benefit can be seen. Another threat to food the country is the resettlement of major projects such as the dams. Large regions of agricultural land are being destroyed here. The forcibly resettled people are given new land, but the land can only be used to be a limited extent or not at all for agriculture. The reason is a series of disputes over land use in Laos, in which the people is clearly disadvantaged. In most of the cases where the population complies against the land grab, the complaint is put in jail, sometimes under inhuman conditions. Our member in Laos report increasing problem with feeding the population because the farmers are forced to farm on poor quality land, malnutrition and famine acute in a country that until a few years ago was not only able to provide itself with food, but also no export. Land law in Laos is based on the principle of communism. This means that the land belongs to the state. The population is only given the right to use the land. However, this right can be revoked at any time. If you consider that Laos is a country with a very high level of corruption, it's very easy to understand how corruption civil servants tend to grant land right to rich investors rather than to the much poor population. Recommendation: urgent and basic law reform in Laos is urgently required. This includes the promotion of traditional family businesses and the reintroduction of the ban on conventional banana plantation. In addition, the use of pesticides must be banned and ecological agriculture promoted. Sustainably produced organic food from Laos can become a subsequent branch label and ensure that people can provide for themselves and feed themselves. We know from experience that organic farmer nowadays has to be subsidies less and also leads to better income for the farmers. SDG 16 promote peaceful and inclusive society for sustainable development, provide access to justice for all and build effective, accountable, and inclusive institutions at all levels. The rule of law in Laos is ruled solely by the Lao People's Revolutionary Party. There is no separation of power in Laos, and therefore no independent judiciary. People who are executed of any crime do not have the opportunity to get a lawyer. It's as the international standard. Political crimes are particularly severely punished in Laos. Sin is forbidden in Laos criticize of the party or state and its government. Any expression of opinion that the party leadership does not like is in fact a criminal offense. The case of three internet bloggers, Lord Kam Thamawong, Somporn Pimason, and Sukanjai That in 2016 was particularly explained here. Somporn Pimason was sentenced to a 20 years term, while Sukanjai That was sentenced to 16 years. Lord Kam Thamawong was handed to 12 years sentence. However, a lot of human rights activists have to seen or us in recent years for criticizing the government or the authorities. Another well-known case in Laos is of Miss Hoi Hyang Sanyaburi, better known name her nickname Muay. In November 2019, she was sentenced to 5-year imprisonment and a fine of the equivalent of $2,280 for violating Article 117. Time and again, human rights activists disappear or are murdered in Laos. The case of Ot Sanyawong, a Lao democracy activist, is particularly mysterious. He disappeared in Thailand in 2019 under previously unexplained circumstances. Sombat Somporn disappeared on December 15, 2012. Periods in his abduction, Sombat Somporn has challenged massive government negotiated land agreements that had left thousands of villages in Laos homeless without receiving compensation. The government of Laos rejected an independent investigation into the case. The Deans started area protests in Laos, where political speech is tightly controlled. In general, Laos is known for the fact that the fundamental rights of its citizens are increasingly restricted. This is particularly evident in the limitation of media and the internet. In the case of crimes such as drug crime, corruption, illegal lodging, forced prostitution in Laos, mostly only petty criminals are brought of justice. Criminal networks or leaders of large gangs are rarely punished. The general impression is that there is not interest in solving the great crime. However, a lot of energy is consumed in the persecution of those who think differently from politics. Recommendation. Laos urgently needs a separation of powers. The judiciary, executive, and legislative branch must be able to act independently of one another. For this reason, the sole claim to power of the People's Revolutionary Party of Laos must also be delighted. Only a fundamental democratic reform can save the catastrophic state of the Lao nation. Separation of powers as well as more freedom of the press and freedom of expression. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bunton, for your wonderful speech. We have heard about some structural problems in the Lao PDR. We see that Lao PDR is far away from the international standard, but it is not enough to have a look on the problems. It is very important to see, to have a look on the recommendations and the solutions of the problems. Dr. Dunton has told us. This was very wonderful. Our next speaker, he is from Australia, a former Laos citizen. It is Mr. Peng Saksadi from Australia. Mr. Saksadi, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Marcus. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Peng Saksadi, member for Alliance for Democracy in Laos, chapter Australia. Today, I'm going to talk about three SDG, SDG 8, 10, and 17. SDG 8, reduce decent work and economic growth. And SDG 10, reduce inequalities, and 17, partnership for the goals. Now, decent work and economic growth, SDG 8. The Chinese debt trap diplomacy plus the culture of corruption of the Lao PDR government does not contribute to decent work and economic growth. I give you 4 contradictory cases. Case number 1, the Railway, the One Belt One Road project, the Railway project in Laos of $6.8 billion US, put the country into debt. Case number 2, the casino at Boten Casino, built in 2002, were ordered to shut down in 2011 by China due to bad management, indicating the lack of transparency and accountability. Case 3, the Chinese own the King's Romans Casino in the Tonpeng district of Bokeo, a blacklist of hotspot for illegal operation under the communist Lao government, Lao PDR, a blacklist of money laundering, drugs, human and animal trafficking. Case number 4, the acquisition of land of 5,000 hectares of land in the city of Sanam Sai in the southern province of Attapeu to China for agriculture and renewable forestry plantation improvement is another cover-up for transparency and accountability of the communist Lao regime. Turning socialist economic system into modern capitalism, China President Xi Jinping dreams of world power, made deals with the Lao PDR's puppets of these projects only benefit the powerful and the corruptive, and nothing for the benefit of innocent Lao citizens. Whether they were land acquisition deals, special economic zones deals, mining project deals, dam project deals, these project deals only service towards the national culture of corruption. I give you an estimate from 2019 and 20. The culture of corruption in Lao PDR government to put the country among those developing countries at ranking number 138 over 188 Human Development Index and 134 over 180 Transparency International CTI Index. With population of 7.4 million estimate 2020, of GDP of 19 billion .127, nominal 2019 estimate, GDP ranked at 112, nominal 2019. Corruption of 14.42 equal to nearly $3 billion US. Together with investment deals of turning natural resources into budget, as mentioned in SDG 10, Laopedia needs to reform itself to become a democratic with many political parties in government and accountable constitution which can serve the whole population, equality, to reduce corruption, crimes against humanity, and really looks forward to joining hand in hand with the world community how to make sustainable development goals work for the benefit of the national. Recommendation, large scale of projects based on Soviet model are only beneficial to limited extent. For this reason, local companies must be promoted with local projects, especially in the small business sector. Only then can a healthy middle class develop in Laos, and thus more prosperity for everyone. In projects for all foreign investors, it must be guaranteed that all workers that are needed come from Laos, with a few exceptions. For example, highly specialized skilled workers who cannot be found in the domestic labor market. Reduce inequalities, SDG 10. After the seizure of power, the Lao People's Revolutionary Party on the 2nd of December 1975 over the Royal Lao government, Lao was left with very few government officials to govern the country. For most of the government officials from the Lao royal government were captured and put in concentration camps in their tens of thousands at the time. They included the King and Queen of Laos, King Sri Savangvatthana and Queen Kampui, and many members of their families. And until now, after 46 years, the fate of these people is left unknown of what had happened to them. The Lao-Vietnamese Treaty of Friendship on the 18th of July 1977 of 25 years, the continuation of same treaty of further 10 years were one-sided affair to Vietnam. The so-called bilateral Vietnamese-Lao cooperation since 1980 put Vietnam in total control of Laos for being total dependency on the army and the government officials and expertise. The Laotian culture was gradually replaced or assimilated by the Vietnamese culture. This happened in many ways. For example, through communist parties in Vietnam and Laos, marriages between Laotians and Vietnamese were arranged in return for a career. Similarly, to Vietnam in control of Laopedia, the bilateral Lao-Chinese cooperation for investment deals in the country only benefited the Chinese investors. Hence, China, for the formation of the socialist economic system of the communism in partnership, the world communities were all put on alert about China with first the One Belt, One Road, or debt trap diplomacy of China. In 2019 came the CCP virus or Wuhan virus and the COVID-19 virus pandemic, which put the whole world on recession, frozen in all activities, killing more than 3 million people and still spreading after 2 years. Recommendations, both for the neighboring countries and for Laos itself, it is necessary to see that the benefits for all well-developed Laos are far higher than a poorer developed country. as was correctly recognized by the Allied Western powers after the Second World War and implemented in the Marshall Plan. At that time, the countries devastated by war were systematically rebuilt economically and are today indispensable economic partners in the world from everyone involved. Recommendation, both today, a well-developed country will be able to stabilize the region and will also be a good economic partner in the long term. The massive depletion of raw materials is only of limited time and economic benefit and harms the environment massively on a global scale. In addition, the countries must promote a ban on acceptance of non-sustainably produced true goods from Laos by bringing and sustainably producing products with lower import duties. SDG 17, Partnership for the Goal. Laos has taken 2 correct steps in the right direction with its entry into the ASEAN Alliance and its accession to the World Trade Organization. Likewise, the liberation of the economy since 1987 has been an important milestone for a more sustainable development. However, corruption and lack of implementation of international standards and also its own laws inhibit the development in the country massively. Laos has been able to compete in international competition, relying heavily on the help of Vietnam and China. This has led to an ever-increasing dependence. International observers see that the People's Republic of Laos is politically managed by Vietnam and economically by China. Our observers even go as far as to make the locals feel no longer to be secure in their own country. However, a major obstacle to such a partnership is the Vietnamese-Lao Friendship Treaty of July 18, 1977. This secures Vietnam's control over Laos and prevents other states from coming to a better and more intensive partnership without the consent of Hanoi. The government of Laos cannot act. I give recommendation for the SDG 17. The establishment of a national SDG number 18 is just a pure distraction from the problem of Laos. Nevertheless, Laos must break away from its dependence on Vietnam and China and find the way to an eco partnership with China and Vietnam. Therefore, the friendship treaty between Laos and Vietnam must be changed to a genuine partnership agreement that is not independent. Many countries in the region were careful to take advantage of each other in the past because European colonial rulers showed them how to do it in the 19th century. But these former colonial powers have learned, namely that helping and building up each other brings more benefits for everyone. Despite many problems, the European Union is the most successful union of nation states today. It is precisely this spirit that Southeast Asia needs. The ASEAN community needs to be more focused on developing and promoting common values, it is also important that ASEAN not only focus on the economic interests of large corporations, but above all on small businesses. The states in Southeast Asia need much more partnership and equal action with one another, not against one another. Thank you, Marcus.
Marcus, bitte Kamera, Mikrofon.
Thank you, Mr. Peng-Saksadi. Sorry, my microphone was blocked, for this wonderful speech. He has given us an overview how important international partnerships is and how international influence can have an influence of the development in a country. Partnerships are much better than exploitation, we know. And Mr. Peng-Saksadi has gone a little bit more deeper in the problem. Laos has the dependence from China and from Laos, from Vietnam. And the partnership treaty between these both countries. Mr. Saksadi has told us that we promote more partnership, good neighborhood to the other countries, how important it is and how good it will be for all countries to develop the neighbor country, in this case, Laos, the Lao PDR. Now I will give the floor to Mr. Bunhom Chantar. He is a former Laos citizen, now living in exile in France. He will give us the next overview. Mr. Bunhom Chantar, you have the floor.
Okay. Thank you, Marcus. And ladies and gentlemen, I am Bunhom Chantar, the Vice President of Alliance for Democracy in Laos, French chapter. I'm gonna talk about in this event today, SDG 9, 11, and 12. SDG 9 being resilient infrastructure, promotes inclusive and sustainable industrialization and foster innovation, whatever. But what try me at this stage is you have road in poor condition in Laos, road traffic also deficient. Only 5,670.5 are paved from 21 and 716 kilometers of pavement currently in Laos. The ADL repeatedly received reports from members in Laos that funds that were planned to the construction of road have been misappropriated for other projects. During the monsoon season, when the rain falls from May to October, you can see impassable paths. Vehicles are no longer coming up the mountain, slipping down the steep slopes or sticking up to the axle in the mud. Sometimes the remaining trucks block the route for days until they are excavated by the population. Forts are rushing to torrents after heavy rain and cannot no longer be crossed. During the rainy season, for almost half a year, farmers have difficulty getting to the night market or administrative center. The economy is almost paralyzed. Children cannot go to school. Women who would rather release in the hospital must give birth to their child at home and take the risk of losing the life for the children. Now, Lao government boasts about his leading project. You get my meaning. The right road construction with a so-called high-speed train connecting Vientiane to Sichuan in the Chinese province of Yunnan with 530 kilometers length with $7 billion cost at the beginning. The cost has now risen to over $20 billion, while the proponents have touted the railway's economic benefit. The project has drawn major international criticism over its environmental and social impacts. Laos one-party state has tolerated any dissent. There are reports that the project has pushed people off of their land without compensation. Laos government has requisitioned nearly 4,000 acres, with displacement of families estimated to over 4,400. The government hasn't compensated them fairly. Completion of this railroad is scheduled for December 2021. And our recommendation in this point, infrastructure project must also serve the common good and not major investor, as the case of railway construction. Land concession in return for infrastructure project have only result in further depreciation of Laos and not a better economy. A comprehensive regional planning is needed. The United Nations can help by taking the construction project into its own hand, as long as the corruption in the country is not under control. It would also be worse, considering if you cannot privatize a part of the street to relieve the public coffers. Business representatives tend to have a greater interest in good transport links. And now, SDG 11, make cities and human settlement inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. I may not feel like talking only about negative side, but I need to, honestly. The lack of infrastructure and the misplanning still hinders many communities in Laos, as described in SDG 9. Only 1,700 kilometers are paved from 13,000 kilometers. Urbanization is an emerging issue in Laos, with a number of problems, such as higher population growth, migrant workers, child protection, HIV, malnutrition of children among urban families, diseases, pollution, and sanitary conditions. The proportion of urban population is expected to rise more than a third of the total population over the next few years. Obviously, most migratory flows go from city to town, mainly to the capital, Vientiane, plus a very different problem, such as the displacement of local product without packaging, the establishment of product from abroad, as well as the settlement of millions of China in Laos, created the amount of waste, which also increased dramatically. But since almost nothing had changed in the garbage management law, this is leading now to increasing littering of the landscape. This is also a significant movement across the border to Thailand, which has a similar language and culture. However, reliable statistics are rare. Urban sanitation is generally poor. Example, in Vientiane capital, with the lack of adequate drainage and sewage system, and the poor design of existing sanitation and septic tanks. Unpurified industrial wastewater additionally endangers drinking water. According to the World Bank plan, Laos needs to invest $19 million annually for water and $20 million annually for water sanitation by 2020. And our recommendation in this SDG element, as described in the previous section, as with most other problems, comprehensive regional planning and public control of project and investment are essential. The long-term arrangement of the World Food Authority and some already involved development aid organizations will be needed further. And immediate reorganization of the garbage management law is required. This reorganization must go hand in hand with transparent regional planning that is monitored by the public. And finally, SDG 12, ensure sustainable consumption and production patterns. In this point, I would say that local products are mainly present in the agricultural sector. The domestic market in Laos is increasingly flooded with products from China and Vietnam. Mega project and special economic zone, especially for investors from China, did not provide any benefit for the population. The local residents are forcibly relocated and replaced by settlers from China. The jobs created by mega projects are mostly for them. We have to assume that about 30% of the land of Laos belong to foreign investors. Land that offers to the Laotian as compensation is mostly of inferior quality. The population is finding it increasingly difficult to manufacture their own products and to ensure their own economic independence. And now, our recommendation: the forced relocation in Laos must stop immediately, just like the generous land allocation for foreign investors, which do not provide any benefit to the population. Instead, one should promote organic agriculture and develop the infrastructure in the rural areas. This results in a much longer term and more sustainable benefit for the people in Laos than the large-scale project of foreign investor. Thank you, Mark. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bonamchanta. It was a wonderful speech. Your overview was very good. That you have given us, that it is very important to use the own power and the own economy for reaching the SDGs, and how important it is to make a good structure in economy and the urban cities for the development of the Laos nation. Our next speaker, this will be Mr. Kambang Antosien. He is a former Laos citizen, now living in Canada. He is our next speaker, Mr. Antosien. Now you have the floor.
Yes. Thank you, Marcus. I'm Tom Manager, ADL representative of Canada. My SDGs number 6, 7, 13, 14, and 15. And I would like to talk about mining and the dam Lila first table. The mining in Laos destroyed environment badly, such as destroyed forest. Chemical from mining plant run to the river and poison the fish, animal, and human beings because not good of taking care of that. Now I'm talking about the dam. According to the report, the Minister of Energy and Mine in December 2019, there are 77 hydropower plants in operation in Laos and 27 more under construction across the country. When they complete, construction will be hundreds of dams. There will be hundreds of dams over Laos in past, and had been 4 dams failure. One on December 16, 2016, the tunnel of Sekaman number 3 dam of Vietnam company burst in flooding in Dak Chung district, Sekong province. No casualties were reported. Number 2, on September 11, 2017, the Nam Ao Dam broken in Siang Kuang province. By that time, in still construction. And flood of 8 villages were flooded in Tathom district, Sai Sombun province. And no compensation had been received yet. And no consult had been reported. And number 3, 23rd July 2018, Sepien Se Nam Noi dam burst and 19 villages were flooded in Attapeu province. Report that more than 13,000 people have been affected. More than 7,000 homeless, hundreds were missing, and more than 3,000 have been rescued. And more than 3,000 have been rescued, at least 40 dead. Number 4, on August 4th, 2019, Kang Kuan Dam burst in Pek district, Siang Kuang province due to heavy rain. Now we can countable 4 dams in 4 years straight. Dam collapse in Laos. Now I would like to go to the my SDG number 6, clean water and sanitation recommendation. Dam construction must be stopped immediately, and networking population must be promoted. Consistent construction of waterwork and wastewater treatment plant must be given priority infrastructure planning. Again, original planning is inevitable. Here too, openness and transparency are important so that the public scrutiny can take place. SDG number 7, affordable and clean energy. Recommendation, Laos must be assistantly use the avenue generated from the export of electricity for the expansion its own electricity network instead of the expansion towards foreign country. So, however, since massive construction, the dams is also be ecological concern. It must be also tested under help of international specialists for environment protection. Moreover, the economic data of Laotian district industry must be disclosed in order to be able to control by Parliament. So SDG number 13, climate action recommendation. The country where mainly products from the predation of Laos contribute and encourage to control the contribution more strictly. The import of such production must be banned in country of exception EU, USA, and ASEAN country. Effort reasonable program need to be strengthened actionally. As a consultant for sustainable timber management and environment protection, international NGOs are able to access environment protection such as Greenpeace, Robin Hood, and other 14 conserve and sustainable use ocean, sea, and marine resources. Number 14, light below water recommendation. The construction of sewage treatment plant need to be promoted, and international supervisor authority for the construction of them must be stopped for the time being until international group of experts had been investigated the effect on nature. Higher safety standard must be created for transport of oil and chemical. And this also requires cross-nation cooperation. The cooperation of factories which take raw waste into the river must be set immediately. New license should be subject to strictly monitor environment control. The owner of the factory have to pay for the damage. The officials affected by the corruption are to dismiss and punish. So SDG number 15, lies on land, recommendation. To achieve this goal, the law that already exists must be enforced. Since these laws are circumvented, because of corruption, only fighting corruption with public control can lead to succeed. In addition, foreign business partners from USA and Europe, for example, should be refrained from doing the business that would result the overexploitation of nature in Laos. So thank you, Mr. Marcos.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kambang. Antosian, it was a wonderful speech. Now we have learned that not everything with the label green energy is a real green energy for the environment, and not every energy power by green energy, in this case the dams, is good for the environment. We need regional plannings, we need more public views on all these projects, and an international control. This is very, very important. Thank you, Mr. Antosian. Now our next speaker will be Ms. Kampeng Suvasan. She is from United States, a former Laos citizen, now living in exile in USA. Ms. Suvasan, now you have the floor.
Thank you, Marcus. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Kampeng Suvasan. I am the president of the Alliance for Democracy in Laos, Chapter USA. Today, I will be speaking about SDG 3, 4, and 5. Let's start with number 3. Ensure healthy life and promote well-being for all ages. Although Laos is a communist country, there is not enough medical care for the population. Anyone who has money or tied to the Communist Party can get medical treatment abroad, as the hospital in Laos generally in poor condition. The generally bad situation hit the rural population particularly hard. Our employees report on sick people who suffer without medical help. The sick depend on the help of their neighbors. Often these people die of starvation or succumb to their illness. We have not only learned of the poor condition of the hospital from our members in Laos, but also in case in which sick people are given insufficient or medical help at all. The first question when admitting new patient is very often about the payment for the treatment of the patient. This is all the more surprising since Laos is said to be a country based on the communist model. We note that even the 46 years in which the Communist Party ruled, it has not been able to keep its promises to people. There is somewhat contradicting picture, of course, the corona crisis in Laos. Officially, the authority in Laos reported very few cases of corona diseases. On the other hand, we have heard of corona deaths and illness from population that have been concealed by authorities. The dead were quickly buried without a funeral ceremony and without an autopsy. Relatives were forbidden to report about these deaths. It is also forbidden for people to report anything about corona pandemic in Laos. Since April 2021, there has been a sudden increase in corona case in Laos. We assume that this increase assumes that the corona measures have not been implemented in the hotel and the casino operated by foreign investors. Report from our staff that casino and hotel were open despite the lockdown have been confirmed by Radio Free Asia. Since accordingly to official figures, only about 9% of the population has been fully vaccinated. By June 1st, 2021, herd immunity is not to be expected this year. The government of Laos has failed not only in the COVID-19 pandemic, but also in other areas. People in Laos are still dying of HIV. A total of 14,460 people died of HIV between 1990 and 2020. It is estimated that there are currently around 10,117 people with HIV in 2020 alone. At least 70 people died of the disease. Recommendation. In order to ensure better basic medical care for the population, comprehensive and transparent regional planning must be made. This regional planning must also be discussed publicly in order to optimize it. In addition, it is advisable to raise the training of rescue service employees to the level paramedics. For example, in England or the USA, the training of nurses also need to be improved, similar to what is happening in Australia. In this way, a shortage of doctors can be better compensated for the short term. Furthermore, the state must guarantee basic medical care. Health in Laos shouldn't be a question of income. Number 4, ensure inclusive and equitable education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. The Human Development Index, HDI, in Laos developed only very slowly from 1990 to 2019 and rose from 0.405 to 0.613 or 51.4%. It ranked 137 out of 189 countries in the world. The reason for this development are very complex. On the one hand, there are major shortcomings in the planning of educational policy, despite the intensive efforts of some NGOs to instruct officials and local politicians in appropriate regional planning. These efforts seem to work only inadequately. The Vietnamization of Laos, which has intensified in the recent years, it's also one of the reasons for the lag in Laos. Now, Vietnamese becomes the most important foreign language in the Laos school. Pupils who study Vietnamese instead of English or other language are absolutely preferred in some schools. Lao children are forced to learn Vietnamese in Lao school all over the country. It is also known that many teachers, especially in rural areas, are not paid. Some are forced to teach for free. Other teachers simply forget to pay their salary for several years. This leads to increasingly corruption in the system. The teacher takes fee from the student for services that are actually free to secure their income. In poor families who cannot afford this fee, this often leads to dropout. Girls are more likely to be affected than boys. Recommendation: the preference of the Vietnamese language over all other foreign languages must cease, as must be exchange and assimilation of Laos culture by the Vietnamese culture. There is also an urgent need to stop corruption in the education system. The state must ensure the teachers are adequately paid right from the start. Number 5, achieve gender equity and empower all women and girls. Equal rights for women in Laos have only been partially achieved. If women are still underrepresented in politics, they currently even have a small head start when it comes to land ownership. In 2019, the female representation in national parliament in Laos consists of 27.5% of the available seats. This was a slight increase from 2015, by which female held just 25% of the available seats in the nationwide parliament in Laos. However, the retention and completion price for both genders is much lower. Girls in smaller villages especially aren't anticipated to finish main school. In some certain circumstances, unsafe situation for ladies and male choice have contributed to a better dropout rate for girls. Additionally, girls from smaller ethnic communities have a higher poverty fee and are much more likely to have opportunity to attend faculty. A current report from the United Nations Population Fund revealed that whereas access total health care in Laos has improved, many women nonetheless lack of mandatory detail about reproduction health service. The report additionally disclosed that nearly 15% of married women want access to family planning companies, but are unable to use the standard contraception method. Violence against women is only partially recorded. In fact, 58% of women and 49% of men believe the violence in a marriage is perfectly normal. There are also reports of forced marriages or adoption of Laotian women abroad. Radio Free Asia had just reported another mysterious case in May 2021. But as in many other cases, the authority in Laos seem to be very little able to solve the case. Recommendations. Gender equality is still a task for society as a whole. In order to guarantee equality, Laos needs democratic process and associated public discussion. Both are currently prohibited in Laos. Thank you for your attention.
Okay,
Thank you,
we have last minute now.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Subanasat. Yes, it is really disturbing when we hear from a country who is ruled by a socialized communist government where the social problems, the promoting of the social problems and the solution for social problems is in the ideology of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, who established this ideology. And when there is such a huge lack in social welfare in this country, it's really disturbing when we heard about it. So this is what we learn about too much power, too long power, and no changing the power.
Now last minute. Marcus, they have last minute now.
Now I will give the floor at last to Dr. Bunton Chantalawong Wiese. She will make a short summary of the speeches today. Dr. Bunton, you have the floor.
Yes, thank you. Marcus, we don't have enough time now. This is the now last minute. Thank you for every one to speak today. We have a great event today. Tomorrow is VNR for Lao PDR at 2 to 3 p.m. at New York time. You can see a review from government of the Lao PDR, and we are an NGO. We have to speak tomorrow too. Thank you.